Full spoilers for the Obi-Wan Kenobi 6-part event. When Obi-Wan Kenobi came out on Disney Plus week to week earlier this year, I made no secret of the fact that I wished it had been a movie and released theatrically. I think that would have been a far more interesting and engaging way to tell the Obi-Wan Kenobi story between episodes 3 and 4.
I will do what I must.
And the fact that Stuart Beattie, the original writer of the Obi-Wan Kenobi story when it was a movie, keeps coming out with new little tidbits about how it would have gone, how it would have been structured and paced. It just feels like such a missed opportunity. However, quite a few people have messaged me asking me to watch the Kai Patterson Obi-Wan Kenobi edit. So I did a bit of Googling, and it turns out this guy is an American filmmaker and editor who took it upon himself to cut down the Obi-Wan Kenobi streaming show into a 2.5-hour movie.
The Obi-Wan Kenobi series should have been a movie, and I have proof. I actually took it upon myself to re-edit the entire show into one 2.5-hour movie.
Some of the reasons he cited, I've found myself agreeing with whilst I was watching the show. He said he wanted to fix kind of like the awkward pacing issues, and he felt that there were some scenes that ultimately added nothing to the overall story.
While going through all 6 episodes, I really noticed how much fluff there was. A lot of scenes that literally just added too many frames to each shot, probably just to fill some time quota that they needed. I also changed some of the ordering to some of the scenes just to make them more effective or impactful. I tried to make Reva more menacing.
And that excited me a great deal because I do think there is a better, leaner cut of the Obi-Wan Kenobi show that would probably play better as a movie. So I thought, simply put, I'd watch it and let you guys know what I thought of it, and hopefully answer some of the queries you've had about whether or not I would prefer it as a movie and whether I would like this particular cut that's been made.
Leia outrunning all those people, I just literally cut that all out. Music is such a huge part of Star Wars that I wanted to add more Star Wars music, and so actually I rescored the ending so that they fight to Duel of the Fates.
Yes! Yes!
I'm going to add links to his profiles and websites in the description, so definitely go and check him out and see what he has to say about it. And I think if it's still available, give it a download and try and watch it. I know it got taken down 1 or 2 times, so I'm not sure as of recording this video whether it's still up or not. But yeah, I hope you can get your hands on a copy, and I think it's a really cool thing for fans to make edits, and not for profit. He's just doing it because he loves it and loves Star Wars, and I'm really excited to see what he's done. Okay, so I have watched the Kai Patterson edit, the Patterson cut, and I would say that it is the superior way to watch Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I really mean that. I really enjoyed it, and I found myself sort of enjoying the magic of the Obi-Wan Kenobi show in ways that I perhaps hadn't felt previously when it was chunked up week to week. I think, to no fault of the editor, it emphasised some of the things I didn't like about the show, as well as illuminating the things that I did. First off, I think the opening is far superior. We get straight into the action whilst not leaving out the all-important character moments from the first 2 episodes that really sold me on the idea that this Kenobi show could have been really, really good. I think Kai shows a real knack for knowing what scenes are superfluous and what aren't, and for cutting out certain scenes to provide us with new context and new queries about the way the story unfolds in a satisfying way. For example, the opening scenes with Reva are completely cut out. The first time she appears in this cut is alongside the other Inquisitors, and crucially, we already know that Benny Safdie is the Jedi in the scene, in the Inglourious Basterds scene, where the Grand Inquisitor's trying to root out who the Jedi is and they're trying to kill him. It's a key change to swap around the scenes where Obi-Wan meets Benny Safdie and the Inquisitors meet Benny Safdie, but I think it works all the better because it's that kind of Hitchcock thing of you knowing there's a bomb under the table, you knowing the suspense, when the Grand Inquisitor walks into that bar and you know that Benny Safdie is the Jedi rather than it being a reveal. I think it plays so much better. And then of course, this version is cut so that Reva kills him at the bar rather than him being found later dead.
You'll never find us all.
And I actually think that Kai added in a decapitation there, I'm pretty sure, using special effects. I'd have to go back and watch the original cut of the show. But yeah, I'm pretty sure it's now been recut to imply that he was decapitated rather than like hanged in the streets of Tatooine. So I thought that was really cool. There's other decisions that just trimmed the fat and made everything paced a little bit better. Like, we don't get 3 separate scenes showing that young Leia is rebellious and independent and smart. We just get one scene, but it does all the same heavy lifting, and rather than there being an awkward chase, she's a kid, you know, she just gets captured. And then the story just moves along at a much faster pace. We get to the second planet much quicker. But it also doesn't just cut things out just so we're just left with the bare minimum to tell the story and make it coherent. For example, the Temuera Morrison cameo is intact, but I think that was actually a great moment that served both actors and both characters, and I think it's a really meaningful cameo, so I'm glad that it stayed in. I think in terms of the structure and pacing, it's about as perfect as you could get this 4 to 5 hour story down to about 2.5 hours, because it keeps in all the important plot elements so that it all makes sense, but it doesn't leave out any of the biggest character moments. You've still got the moment where Kenobi and Leia talk from episode 3, and she deduces that he knew her mother, and he says that, you know, I wish I could say that I was your father and give you that comfort. That was a great scene, and I'm glad that stayed in.
Are you my real father?
I wish I could say I was. But no, I'm not.
So like, all of the character dynamics that were kind of the strengths of Kenobi are still there. And I just think it plays a lot better as a movie. There's so many different moments and scenes that took so much longer in the original cuts that here just play out a lot easier and a lot more smoothly and keep the pace up. Like, for example, when they rescue Leia the second time, rather than getting a scene afterwards with Roken and the others talking about Wade, who we don't care about, Kai just uses like a bit of a musical bridge, and then it moves into the next episode, and it plays a lot better. Of course, there are some things that I think could have been cut and should have been cut that the editor could not cut. I don't think we ever needed Leia to get captured and freed twice, especially within a 2.5 hour runtime, and I think that's when it really exposes itself as a TV show cut down into a film. Again, no fault of Kai, because he has to include the second breakout for it to all make sense, but I think ideally, if you could play around with it even more, you'd have the moment where Kenobi first meets Vader moving right into Roken and the others trying to escape them. I think you try and bridge that in some way, like maybe Vader knows where they are immediately as Kenobi gets out of the bacta tank, because it doesn't serve any purpose in episode 4. I'm pretty sure like all the important beats from 3, 4 and 5 of like Kenobi getting back into the rhythm and getting his strength back and developing his relationship with Leia and Vader's relationship to Obi-Wan and Reva's, you know, true nature revealed. I think you could have gotten there with 3 to 5, bridging the gap between episode 4. Episode 4 is so superfluous. I also think this handled Reva much better and proved that sometimes less is more, because we don't get as many scenes setting up the why and how behind her. We aren't shown the Jedi Temple scene which kicked off the original series, so we're not purposely led to believe from the very first moment we see her that, oh, that must be the kid from the start in the Jedi Temple in the prologue. It's something that comes as a reveal much later that Obi-Wan Kenobi deduces, and I think, you know, if I didn't know who Reva was and this was the first time I was watching this Kenobi story as a movie, then I think that would have played much better as a reveal. I think the problem in the original cut is as soon as you see the flashback and then you meet Reva and you know she's gunning for Kenobi, it's very easy to put 2 and 2 together and decide that, yeah, she must be one of the kids in the prologue. So when it does come around, it just feels like we're 5 hours into a twist that we already called. I think this plays a lot better because, you know, she's just a bit more moustache twirling at the start and a bit more one-dimensional, and then when that backstory comes in, it works as a bit more of a curveball in the story. And I definitely think it keeps things more interesting. Also, I do think it's more tragic and more affecting and ultimately more memorable that she dies at Vader's hand. It's got kind of, you know, spoilers for The Boys season finale. It's kind of got the same kind of feeling of Black Noir gearing up to get revenge against Soldier Boy and putting all that time and effort and thought into it, and then, you know, falling at the last hurdle. It makes us hate our villains even more when they get away with their terrible deeds and they aren't avenged. So yeah, I really enjoyed that. And obviously, you know, even though she doesn't come back in this cut, Force users have survived much worse than a stab wound in the gut, apart from Qui-Gon Jinn, poor bastard. So, you know, I don't think this cut necessarily confirms that she wouldn't be able to return at some point down the line if you really wanted that. One of the biggest and most satisfying changes is it actually uses the music from the prequels. Kai's worked in a couple of different tracks. And they're all used really well at appropriate times, like the Force theme when is used when Leia safely lands, and Obi-Wan has realised he's used the Force again, duh. And then of course the final fight with Vader at the end uses both Duel of the Fates and Battle of the Heroes. You might remember from some of my previous Star Wars Kenobi videos that I was pretty pissed off that they put those themes in the trailers and then didn't put them in the final cuts anywhere to be found. I think that's just really skeevy, and you know, like, if you're going to play the themes, work them into the show in a satisfying way. I always think it's strange, you know, like with this and with No Way Home, you've got some really, really iconic themes from both franchises' pasts, and you don't utilise them to their fullest at all. I feel like character themes and personal motifs and all that kind of stuff are really good to utilise when you're bringing characters back and you're trying to drum up some nostalgia without just sort of like repeating shots and plot beats in a derivative way from what came before. I think like music is ironically the one area where I think they could go a bit more ham on the nostalgia, and they just don't seem to want to do it, ever, with this or with No Way Home. Yeah, play Tobey Maguire's iconic theme. Play some Duel of the Fates, play some Battle of the Heroes. I think this edit proves that those fights would have been way more awesome with them in. Yeah, like I really like Natalie Holt, and I think she did a really awesome score for Loki, but the score in Kenobi definitely left something to be desired. I don't think there's any memorable tracks at all, really. So the fact that there was a lot more prequel music in this edit, I think played a lot better with me, and made some of the, you know, the fights more exciting. And again, it's no fault of the edit, but as much as you can rewrite the script in the edit, you can't change the way the show looks. And unfortunately, as I was watching it through, even in a 2.5 hour format, I was like, man, this looks so TV. Like, there's just no flair to any of the visuals. A lot of the environments look really bland. And you know, as much as Duel of the Fates made the Vader Kenobi fight even more awesome, it still takes place amongst a pile of nondescript rocks, and that's a real shame. It really just pales in comparison to the look and feel of the prequels. Even though they have a really man-made, fake CGI quality to them, I think the production design and the scale of it, and just like the, you know, the usage of the environments, like with the Mustafar fight actually having the lava be another threat during the duel, just boosts it so much more than any of the stuff in this. And also, like, I just really can't get behind all like the shaky, free-handed camera movements in this. Some of it just really doesn't make any sense, and I think some of the fights, in spite of some cool choreography, suffer because of the cinematography. But that was something going into watching this edit. I knew they wouldn't be able to fix that or change that, so it's not really their fault. And I think all the things that could be made better out of the original 6-episode cut has been made better. I think it's a lot more streamlined, but all the important parts of the story and all of the moments that I actually thought were emotive and did work well are still there. There's a couple of little tweaks, like having Qui-Gon's voice come in during the final fight, which I think sets up his cameo at the end much better, even though the cameo is ultimately wishy-washy. And yes, there's still things in it that I think are fan servicey and don't make much sense, and I think there's still some awkward dialogue here and there. But again, that's just the source material that we're working with when we're cutting it into a movie. There's really not much more that can be done. But I would say that this was a far more enjoyable experience in a 2.5 hour format, rather than waiting week to week for little breadcrumb trails of stories that were pretty predictable and weren't that interesting and didn't look that good. So if I'm ever going to watch Kenobi again, I think it'll be the Kai Patterson edit, and I implore you to do the same. This is probably one of the best fan edits I've ever seen. There were times where I didn't feel like I was watching a fan edit at all, and I thought it was all cut together really smoothly, and the added blender effects were really impressive. And you know, considering it's just some guy doing this out of his home office or whatever, with no budget, I think it's really a feat of wizardry. Eric Kripke the creator of The Boys, recently said that a lot of streaming shows are pretending to be long-form movies, and that in actuality nothing really happens till like the 8th or 9th hour. And I think it's very clear that he was obviously talking about shows like Kenobi, like Book of Boba Fett, and I hope it signals, you know, a change in that the streaming shows kind of get their act together a bit more and actually deliver us bespoke TV stories. I want lots of things to happen in every episode. I want us to be left on the edge of our seats waiting week to week, and that can only come with dedicated TV writing. If you're writing a show that's split up into parts, we need good individual episodes, not just like little breadcrumb trails and very little happening for the first 4 hours. So yeah, something that I didn't really enjoy and has left me to become quite disillusioned with the franchise based on a string of mediocrity was made just a little bit better by cutting it down and trimming the fat and taking out what was ultimately wholly unnecessary to just give us something that worked a bit better.
A big thank you to my full fat tier patron, Dr. Chike. If you'd like to donate money to my Patreon, you can find me at patreon.com/fullfatvideos.